always had this affinity for connecting the dot. And I didn't realize even in that moment that that was PR. It took me a moment to circle around and realize like, okay, so you can actually be a creative and not be a graphic designer.
Hey, it's your girl Nancy Red, and this is season 4 of Mompreneurs, where we celebrate beautiful Black entrepreneurs who are also amazing moms. Now, every week I chat with my guests about how they are crushing it simultaneously as a business mogul and as a mom, and we're listening to their inspiring journeys and incredible advice. Now, my next guest is a PR and communications mogul with over 15 years of experience leading PR for global brands. And she's also, for over a decade, had her expertise channeled into creating opportunities for women to thrive personally and professionally. Megan Mason is the founder of the L Collective, which is a strategic creative consulting firm offering support to talent and brands. And she's also a very busy wife and mother. Welcome, Megan.
Hello, Nancy. Thank you so much for having me today.
Oh, I'm so glad that you can make time for us. You have an incredible trajectory as a very solid, awesome mompreneur. And it's not easy, but it's worth it, wouldn't you say?
100%. And I appreciate the accolades because, you know, it's a different type of journey when you add mom to the title of entrepreneur.
Okay, so before we get too far into the business side of things, who puts the mom in your mompreneur? Talk to us about your household.
Certainly. Well, my household, I can kind of start where I grew up. I grew up with a very strong-willed set of parents, my father and mother, and then unfortunately my father passed away when I was young of an illness with cancer. And my mother, they were both business owners. My mother was a practicing attorney in North Carolina, which is the state that I'm from, Raleigh. And I grew up and I always had this affinity for watching her navigate and understanding how she dealt with people and new people. And then as I kept growing, I kept telling my friends, everyone's talking about their parents and how they're like, my mom's not going to be off for my game today. And I'm like, well, actually, my mom, I've never seen her work for anyone. And that was something that really stuck with me. And as I matured and understood what that really meant to be a mother and run a business, she was my focal point and role model in that way. And then as time progressed, I lived in New York and came back and lived with her and helped her out in some of her later years. And she's the one who really put the battery in my back, you should say, and is really the mom in my house. And then I, of course, am the one who is running the ship alongside my husband and my two toddlers, soon to not be toddler daughters, 3-year-old Avery Lennox and my 5-year-old Amelia Margot Ray. So our family is dynamic, but I wouldn't trade a minute of it.
I love that. You're so lucky. So your mother is still with you.
Unfortunately, she just passed away, actually.
Oh, I'm so sorry. But for quite some time, you had the fortune. I say this because I wish my mom, she's like, I was born in Martinsville. I'm going to die in Martinsville. There's no way I'm moving into your house. And I'm just like, oh, you're so fortunate.
You know what? And it's funny that you say that, Nancy, because moving from New York, when I started my career, my husband was in the military. He was in the Marine Corps. And I was like, I'm just going to go and see what I can do. I always had this bright lights, big city mentality, and I just wanted to kind of try it out, right? As a little country girl, as my mom would say. And we were there for 6 years. And we always said, okay, whenever we get out, we didn't have kids at the time, we'll go back home because everyone's back home. And I was like, sure. Never thought that day would really come, right? So once it did come, and he's like, okay, so you ready to go back home? And I'm like, not really. So it was a bit of a tug for me actually to come back. And then we were looking for a home at that time. And my mom was like, well, you know, I have the whole house here. I have no reason for it. Like I would love if you all would move in. And that's how it started. And my husband was the catalyst behind like, Megan, you know, like, why wouldn't we? Like, she has more than enough space. It's just her. At the time when we were pregnant, we hadn't told her yet. We were growing our family, so it was a perfect serendipitous moment for me, and I grew to love it. And having lost her this year through a very short, sudden illness, I value those moments because that was a piece that had I just been living in my own mind at the time, I was like, I know I'm on my own. I'm not going back home. But the way that life works and the way that God kind of structures your life and you just kind of follow is that I needed those last years with my mom, and she got to meet my daughters and really pour into them, and now they're just like walking her, especially my oldest. It's ridiculous. So I'm thankful for that opportunity, and you're right, now I can own and say at this point, I can realize how fortunate I really was.
Absolutely, because she was the impetus for your business savvy, you know? And the interesting thing about your journey is you've always had a career track which pivoted into an aspect of your business. How did this come about? When did you first have the spark for the L Collective? Because there is overlap with your executive career, with your corporate career.
Like I said, I've always kind of had this bug for wanting to do my own thing. I didn't necessarily know where I was gonna land, but I had this affinity for business ownership, being that, that woman in charge that I always saw my mom being, and being able to kind of call the shots and not have to worry about, looking over my shoulder or anything like that. So I had that intuition from youth. However, whenever I got married after college, I had this thought of, I knew that even from college and really from childhood, I wanted to be in the entertainment industry. My father, who owned an insurance agency in Raleigh, North Carolina, also owned a radio station in the 70s and the 80s in a rural area in North Carolina. And at that time, we were AM, FM only, and he was an AM station owner. So I grew up, he would host local concerts for different regional groups and acts at the time. So I grew up with my dad backstage, and I grew up in the office, handling ticket sales, and then translates over to the insurance agency where there's like this huge machine. He would do things like start smaller LLCs and businesses in my name and say, this is your business. So you keep checking in. When you come to the office, make sure you ask so-and-so, the receptionist or Johnny's, how your business is doing this week. They implanted those seeds in me from youth, and I value them so much. So when I came to the idea of the L Collective, I had just gotten married. I had moved to the military base with my husband, so I wasn't working full time. And I was like, what am I going to do with this energy? Like, I know there's something that I can do with this time. And I had never started an LLC before. So I was like, okay, this seems easy. I just went to the Secretary of State, filed the LLC. And at that time, it was some long, lengthy, huge name like the L Creative and Lifestyle Agency. Something where I thought was cute. And the L is just a play on my middle initial, my middle name. So that's carried through. But that was my first goal. And my reason for doing that was, even in college and high school, my family and friends, the hobbies and the skill sets that they had, I was the person that wasn't just the consumer or supporting them. I was always like, well, this is great that we see that you can do these amazing things, but how is anybody else going to know? How are you going to grow your business? How are you going to grow your clientele? Like, there needs to be, you have to amplify it. And this is before social media, right? We're still very analog in that way. So it's like,
which is wild, because this was 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013.
2011-ish, right? Facebook was a thing a little bit. But it wasn't as broad as it was now. It was still very much, you had to put in your college email to, get an account. That was the first kind of thing. And we had MySpace before that, really dating myself for probably some of the viewers. But we did, but that was still new. It was very nuanced, and it felt very, trendy at the time. It didn't feel like anything that was going to be a traditional mainstay in the way we see it now in communications. But I was always the one trying to carry the flag. I worked for radio when I was in high school. For actually a Radio 1 station in the local North Carolina market, that I was a part of a executive team board for the annual Women's Empowerment, the first two, I believe it was, Women's Empowerments here in Raleigh. And I always had this affinity for connecting the dots. I was like, if you're doing this is amazing. This could be widespread, at least around the city. Let's let people know. Let's call the radio station. Let's call up, ABC. Let's call NBC. Let's get the word out. And that was the real thought process behind, I really want to package the ones that I know and the ones that I identify as products that I consume and things of that nature, and help to amplify them. And I didn't realize even in that moment that was PR. It took me a moment to circle around and realize, like, okay, so you can actually be a creative and not be a graphic designer. Because even the subsect of the title of creative, or saying that you're a creative, but now we have the creative economy, those things were non-existent 10, 15 years ago. Being a creative had a very rigid type of connotation, and it came.
And it wasn't synonymous with making more money than a professional.
Absolutely
And
not.
that's the irony now is now everybody, because I've been a creative since it wasn't cool to be creative. I've been an author. Well, we had a whole good thing going on as authors back in the day, but that's a whole other can of worms. Nobody wanted to be an author except for, people.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about the journey that you've been on as in this world is times have changed. Like when you first got started, you called the radio station. You could literally call up NBC. But how talent and brands reach customers and reach their audience is very different now. How have you evolved with the L Collective as a professional helping?
Yes, I am a constant consumer. I am someone who, even though I work and play in the media and television space, from 9 to 5, I feel like my 5 to 9 is doing the same thing, but on my own terms, right? Where if I'm locked into to work things, or in the minutia of a new series launching, or producing in a premiere event or a press run in the city, those are my day to day, and I love doing them because it just comes innately to me. But also on my off time, I spend just as much time watching the news, scrolling. Unfortunately, I don't want to say I'm a doom scroller, but what I do is when I wake up in the morning, I make sure I kind of center myself for a moment. I say a quick prayer before I make my coffee. I sit down and I see what happened the night before. So I'm on Instagram, I'm reading, of course, laughing and giggling at the same time, but I realize that that's my mind's way of downloading and making sure that I'm relevant, and on these cultural trends and kind of the topical news to help inform, my 9 to 5. Because now I can, identify when we're talking about things, specific initiatives or specific projects. I can identify within the marketplace. Oh, well, also XYZ brand just announced that they were doing this. Perhaps they're a potential partner in the future, or there's an opportunity for us to plug in talent at this particular experiential event or something of that nature, right? Where I'm able to always kind of have a mind's eye across the industry, and that's really served me well. So that's really how I kind of keep up with what's happening in the industry. In addition to, I'm a student of the industry. I'm constantly looking to learn, constantly trying to see how I can up level myself. It's like an internal competition. Like, okay, you might be okay at this, but what are the people that are coming out of college doing right now? What is it their curriculum look like? And this is kind of a token to the mom life. I even had a moment of clarity last summer or last spring and was like, the kids are in school now. Maybe I can go back and get my master's. Super aspirational. Super aspirational. And I looked for programs because I of course I'm like, I don't want to go in PR. No, this is a slang, but no shade to anybody, but I'm doing PR every day. Let me do something that challenges myself, but also enhances the skill set that I already have. So I just literally was driving into work one day and I think I asked Siri, is there a degree that couples, media with psychology? Because I've always had this affinity for psychology and it's kind of studies of the mind, and also mental health in our industry specifically is something I'm really passionate about. And it comes up with this MS of media psychology, that's offered at a couple of universities in the country and then globally. So I'm like, there's a media psychology master's? This is the one. Started that last summer. Would have been done this summer, but life, of course, continues to life for the mom. And then, of course, had to unfortunately become a caretaker for my mother. But those are the things that really keep me going and also keep me what I feel like is on the cutting edge. And
I'm just gonna change it up though. Fortunately, you got to be a caregiver for your mother, because there's, you can say that you did what you're supposed to do and you were there for her when you needed her. And it's okay if a couple of goals get derailed because of that, because that's just life as a mother, a wife, a daughter, as a human, right? And one of the things that I think is interesting, so you're getting this master's in media psychology, which in 2025 must be a very interesting analysis of what's happening, right? You also have a full-time job, as you talked about, and you have your business. Why is it important and you have your kids and your husband and a whole bunch of life? Why is it important to continue with your business? Why is it important to be a mompreneur?
I think what's the most important to me, Nancy, is it's really a two-pronged answer. I feel like there are still so many things that I know I can accomplish, and I have reserved kind of that ambition. I've kind of bottled it and put priorities ahead of it, rightfully so, right? As being, like you mentioned, a mother, being a daughter, being a wife. There are things that naturally bubble up to the top that have to be tackled right away. And I am the person that's like, oh yeah, let's get this done. Let's get this done. And I push those things to the back burner. So when I have that moment and I'm able to say, this seems interesting. Let me see if I can get into that. I take those opportunities. I'm super impulsive. And then the second piece to that is my girls. I think about, again, how I was so heavily influenced positively by my parents being entrepreneurs and community activists and just kind of what I call the who's who and socialite, in the Black community in the North Carolina area, and how they navigated. Granted, we're talking about the 90s, but that was a prominent time for Black business owners, and they were still some of the only.
It was so much fun. And then were they always dressed really cute?
Yes,
yes, because we're both. These are Southern people, okay? Because my mommy was a businesswoman. My dad, the outfits of the prominent business person. There was no hoodie. There were no flip flops. There was coordination.
There was coordination. You got to coordinate. No, you got to coordinate. It was 100% that, Nancy. And it's funny, I touched on that not too long ago with a girlfriend of mine, how I still have a closet full of sequin dresses and matching purses and shoes and all of these different things that my mom in her later years would never wear. But she was a person that could not shop on the rack. She would travel to regional boutiques, and at that time
they don't make the regional boutiques like they used to. They were very specific, in particular in the South.
Exactly. So we would drive to Virginia. She would drive to Tennessee. She would drive to Georgia to identify with these people. And she's like, well, Megan, I can never see myself in the room. It would be 1 or 2 suits that are the same on a rack. That's where that woman would shop.
That's actually the impetus for what you do. Is your mom was you had an elevated mother, right? And when you have an elevated mother, there's only so far you can fall. Even though I didn't want any of that, I wanted to wear the Black hoodie, but at least I know how to get myself together, and I know what I need to do when I need to do it for the time I have to do it. And you've taken these lessons over the years. You've taken the past and you've formulated it into the present. Talk to us about 2025, the L Collective. What are you doing now? How are you helping people with your current business?
In 2025, I have taken a turn and a pivot, I'll say, in the priority of my business. So I started off as, again, wanting to feed into, those hobbyists, those grassroots community folks who had these businesses and ideas that I knew were bigger than life, but they just felt like was the norm. I have taken that and the effort that it takes to help them see themselves before I can actually package their narrative and share it with the world. I've taken that tenacity and that experience over the last decade and some change, and I have realized that I really want to impact and work directly with talent. The talent piece, of course, coming from my corporate background, right, of having to navigate spaces with high-level talent and high-pressure situations, and always challenging myself to help be the calm in the storm, I call it. Because in our industry, entertainment overall, really the world is in chaos right now, right? But that's another episode. But our industry has been known to be this very high impact, high visibility, high level stressed situation. And kind of going back to my affinity for, mental health and wellness, along with that psychology piece of it, and understanding that the humanity in a celebrity or in the fame, in the chaos. I task myself every time I walk into a room with being that one that they can look at and not see panic. The one that they can look at and say, oh, Megan's here, it's going to be okay. So I have really now grown, I'll say, from not only I'm always going to be stuck to PR strategy, I can pitch and come up with a media campaign in my sleep, right? It's just what I love doing is putting storytelling and curating those stories for folks who are passionate about what it is that they do, but taking it a step further and actually putting that to work and being the microphone, I'll say, and the advocate for those passions for talent who have these amazing skill sets, whether it be influencers or actresses, or those who may be in what they consider a kind of closed off area. I work actually too with a professional athlete's wife who has her degree and was in tech and sales and PR herself. And now she's in this different world that looks totally different from what, those of us who are working civilian jobs, I'll say, looks like. But she's like, I have my own voice. I have so much I want to contribute, but need someone to help guide the ship. And I was like, this is where I belong in this moment. So there's about 4 women that I'm supporting right now as their talent manager, who I just have the most joy when I open my email. I have the most excitement when I'm reaching out to brands and sharing their stories, because I know that anything that comes out of that particular work, I'm directly affecting the life and the dream of an individual who's just like me. And that's in 2025, that's where I feel myself growing the most. That's where I feel like all of the energy that I've had over the past has been kind of scattered across my family and, supporting my mom here in the house and her supporting me, all those types of things. I feel like I can put all of that energy now that, when I had some that was lost or fall off, and I can put that into really authentically supporting others and being an advocate for them. So yeah, that's where I am now.
Because you went from being a sandwich generation, which is very difficult. You've got your mommy, you've got your very small children. Your mom has had a passing now, and the new season has begun. And your children are on their way to school. This is a big moment for you. So you have time to actually lean in. And it's honestly, does it feel, even though you've gone into a new pivot, a more intensive version of what your business does, and even though you still have a full-time job, with the passing of your mother and with the growing of your children, do you feel like you have all this free time?
You know what, Nancy? No one has asked me that. It has been 5 months, and I can speak about it candidly because my mother was such a colorful, off-the-color woman. I never had a moment to really be down at all. I'm just like, this is just so on brand for you. But yes, to answer your question, I 100% feel...
Can you tell I'm in the throes of this? Like many of us, right?
You totally know. You I feel like you know me. You have a camera here on the wall. I do. I have a lot more time, and I think it's serendipitous because I always used to joke around, and I would even post sometimes on socials like, parenting your parents is not cute, right? It's not. It's just not. There's a lot of things that it is. It's not pretty. But what do we do when the energy that we put into that, and like even the grief that we feel and the energy it takes to roll our eyes when they're gone, right? Because it takes a lot of energy. You're upset about it, but you do it because you love them. You owe them your life, right? I'm
not even upset because my mom was great, but I'm just like, whoa, this is a lot. So then you think, well, because for my mom was a businesswoman who took care of her mom, and this was in the 80s when you didn't have Uber Eats. There was no Postmates. There was nothing. There was you in a car in one store that was open from 8 hours a day.
And
I don't know how they did it, but we're doing it. And now when this season has changed, you have this newfound, I can do anything. I can fly. I can make this business. I can pivot. I can do whatever I want to do. We're making it.
It's true. I do. I 100% feel that way. And I honestly think about it as a gift that she gave me, because she knew my aspirations. She knew what I wanted to do. And she also knew like where I wanted to be. And she always supported me, even though we lived 2 separate lives in a house. She would go one way. Oh, I'm in Martha's Vineyard this weekend. Oh, I flew to Dallas to see my friends. I'm like, I didn't even know you were gone. I thought she went to work. I went to the office. But I do earnestly feel like at the end of her life that she gave me full confidence and belief. She told me that I believe that whatever decision you make is the right decision.
And you have these 4 clients that you can pour more into and more to come. And you're seeing this new blossoming of you as you were a caretaker and you're a mom, but you're also a nurturer of talent. So with that in mind, what's a success story or even just a small accomplishment since this pivot that you're proud of that the L Collective has accomplished?
In short, this transition and this realization of where my skills really sit is one that I'm extremely proud of, because I was a person that starting off in this industry, a lot of us have the tale, maybe not some of the newer generation, but we have this tale of you just put your head down and whatever you can get is a blessing, right? Like free, paid, whatever it is, you get that. But in this particular age, to step into this confidence that I have now and being able to say, this is where my skill set lies, has been one that just continues to pay off. And with that, even over the summer, I worked with some mentees to create this amazing event series where we are connecting industry and media, but in a moment where there's just this uncertainty, right, around the industry, but of course overall in the tone of our country. But our people, the culture, we are so dynamic and we have to offer so many things, but a lot of times it's hard to find our partners in that. So to be able to galvanize and put people in one room around some of these cultural moments that happen, right? We have the BET Awards, as I used to work at, that's coming up in LA. We have Essence Festival. We have all these major platforms that are happening for our people or targeting our audience around this time. And I worked with mentees and was just like, you know what? My girlfriend was, one of the girls was like, well, I really want to create a moment for talent. They're not able to really get on some of these red carpets. And I was like, why is that a dream? She was like, that's a dream of mine. I was like, it's not a dream. Let's just do it. So I've been reaching out to talent and agencies and galvanizing, and then just really off of the strength of us asking and people buying into the concept of saying like, we need this opportunity, from filmmakers to influencers to musicians to actors and actresses, have been able to pour into this programming for us that we're titling The Sweet Spot, SUITE, which is super cute, which is the beginning of a series that we've also been sharing with partners and potential sponsors who really get the vision. So I'm like, it's not being done. It has to be done. There has to be an opportunity. So I'm filling those opportunities, and I'm fulfilling my own visions and dreams by identifying those, and not now just sitting with like, that would be so great if someone did that. But I'm doing those things.
You are doing those things, and your girls are seeing you do those things, just like you saw your mommy and daddy do those things. And with that, I have a segment that I love called Mompreneurs Manifestation, where I always ask every mompreneur what you are trying to make happen. Like, obviously you have all this going on, but also how can our audience help to bring it into the universe for you? Like, what can people who are listening, how can they participate in the L Collective?
Certainly. Well, the L Collective, like I said, is a baby of mine. We have our website, thelcollective.com, where I am working through in real time to put up some of these things that I'm working on, right? To be able to share and be able to make this connecting piece, right? With sometimes what could be a polarizing industry, humanizing it is one of my goals as well. And some speaking engagements that I've done and panel conversations and conferences, I've always been intentional about humanizing this space. Never wanted to feel like, there's this always mean girl concept and no one knows what's going on, making sure that folks can feel like it's attainable. So all of my information can be there. Or be seen there. There's also another passion of mine that I mentioned briefly, is really digging into and advocating for the mental health of our folks in this particular industry, right? Mental health and wellness is something that's important for each and every one of us. But having been in this industry and ingrained in it for so many years, I know that this particular industry adds yet another wall up that keeps us from really identifying and then executing on what we know we need to do when it comes to our mental health and wellness. So over COVID, I started and really dove in and started connecting with mental health professionals to kind of build out a network of folks across the country called Solace at the time. And I've really started developing also, first time you're hearing it here, a talent wellness management division for the L Collective titled Haven Muse, where we're really focused on traveling artists and athletes as they're constantly on the road and having all these transitions. That takes a huge hit too on your well-being, right? That we don't realize because we're moving so quickly. So those are some things that I'm working on here this year that I've started building the groundwork for, specifically the wellness talent management piece that I'm really, really excited about.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. It's really interesting. And it's such a specific niche, but it's very needed, but it's also something people might not think about. And your background is in amplifying people. What are your plans to get the word out about this service that you offer, aside from introducing it on Mompreneurs, of course?
Right? So thank you, Mompreneurs and Nancy Reed, for this opportunity. But I have this network of amazing folks that I have worked with throughout the industry. Like I said, I've been now in the television world for quite some time. I started off at BET, and have still stayed in contact with a lot of my colleagues there. Of course, my family, with the Urban One family and TV One, and also just folks that I've connected with throughout my career that have just been advocates and just really, gone to bat for me, and saw something in me at a time where I wasn't necessarily confident in myself. And I was able to grow into that confidence, right? But because I had people who put me in position because they saw something and they felt like, you know what, if you see it, you can do it. Those folks are still in my corner. So I've been, just kind of soft sounding it. I'm one of those folks, I feel like even though in my confidence, I'm one of those people like, do you think this really works? Does this make sense? So I've been doing a lot of that over the past couple of months. And since that time have made some connections and built some relationships with some sports teams, with some GMs and some owners of some certain leagues, and just kind of working my way in that way. Right?
Amazing. It sounds like you have a plan.
This
is amazing. And it all is, your daughters are seeing it. They will get to inherit the business and the work ethic for generations, right? They saw your mom, they got to know her, they're getting to know you, and it'll be interesting to see where they land and what their children do. So thank you for being here and doing so much as a mompreneur. Can you tell us where everyone can find you and your various businesses? Are they all under the shingle of the L Collective, or at this point, are you separating them out?
They're all under the umbrella of the L Collective at this point. And I am on Instagram and TikTok, but I am at Megan, 5-letter Megan. There's so many Megans now. MEGAN, THEE, the first, spelled out. That's me.
I love that. You were the first Megan before other very famous Megans.
Right. And like, wait, the first.
That's hilarious. I love that. Okay, well, Megan the First is where you can find her. Do you have a website that people can go to as well?
Yes, theLcollective.com. So it's THE, it's 2 E's, ELLE collective.com.
Okay, there you go. You can get all your information that you need. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for having me, Nancy. This has been wonderful. I appreciate it.
And thank you all for listening to and watching Mompreneurs. As a reminder, a brand new episode goes live every Monday on Urban One Podcast Network, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Visit urban1podcast.com to learn more. That's urban1podcast.com.